lige overkant.
It's a pleasure to be with you again today.
Det er en glæde at være sammen med jer igen i dag.
And I think there's a few new people here that were not here yesterday. Is that right? A few people have
Jeg
come
tror, der er
today.
nogle nye i dag, som ikke var her i går.
Special welcome to you.
Så er det velkommen til.
I wanted to start. I like to start by asking you a few questions to see if you remember anything. Those of you who were here yesterday.
Jeg kan godt tænke mig at starte med at stille nogle få spørgsmål, bare for at se, om dem af jer, der var her i går aftes, kan huske noget.
So just very short, just tell me anything that you feel that you remember from yesterday that was important to you.
Så kan I bare helt kort fortælle mig et eller andet fra går, som I synes var vigtigt for jer?
We talked about the perspective on prayer.
I perspektiv på bøn, vi talte om.
Anything?
God calls me to come and live in the tent.
Okay.
Gud kalder mig til at være
Good. Yeah.
Being silent and quiet together with friends.
Good. Great. Being able to be silent before the Lord and
Yeah.
just be in His presence
Hvad er hans navn?
together. Yes. Somebody there? Great.
Der er fri adgang til teltet. Jesus har lavet vejen.
Okay, great.
No forbindelse.
Good. No hindrance. Yes, I understand. Yes, ma'am.
At leve i det nye og friske.
Yeah. That's good.
Not always being the tent, but also sharing the gospel with others.
Yes, right. I mean,
Ikke altid at være ind mod Gud, men også at vende sig om det er hans evangelium.
just to, yeah.
Jeg vil faktisk undskylde, det er meget svært at høre, hvad I siger.
Oh, okay. The sound is.
Har I andre også svært ved at høre det?
Yeah, yes.
Jeg synes ellers, det er rimelig højt.
Okay, just a little short review for those of you who were not here.
Et kort resumé for dem, der ikke var i faktisk.
We used a picture of the camp of Israel.
Vi anvendte billedet på Israels lejr.
And in the camp of Israel, there was a circle in the middle.
På Israels lejr var der en cirkel i midten.
And that was the camp of the Levites, the priests.
Det var leviternes, præsternes camp.
And then there was the rest of Israel camp, the 12 tribes around the Levites.
Og så resten af Israels folk, de kamperede rundt om leviterne.
And so we have like two big circles.
Så vi har de her to store cirkler, som billederne siger.
And right in the middle of the center circle was the tabernacle or the tent of meeting.
Og lige i midten af den inderste cirkel var tabernaklet eller mødestemplet.
And God was teaching the people about some of His great purposes for their lives.
Og Gud lærte sit folk om nogle af de store formål med deres liv.
He's giving us actually how do you say that, a way of thinking about the world and about His purposes for the earth.
Han giver os faktisk en hjælp os til at tænke på en bestemt måde omkring vores opgave og funktion og verden omkring
And
os.
the very most central purpose is our relationship with Him.
Og det mest centrale formål med vores liv og vores relation til ham.
The tent of meeting in the middle represents our relationship with God.
Mødeteltet i midten repræsenterer vores relation til Gud.
And His throne or His rule in the very center of His people.
Og hans trone og hans kongedømme centralt midt i hans folk.
And then the Levites represent that, how do I say it, the principle of learning to collaborate with God, work together with God.
Leviterne repræsenterer det her princip om at arbejde sammen med Gud.
And also to be conformed to His image or transformed into His image.
Og også det her med helliggørelse at blive forvandlet i hans billede.
We spoke about Moses, who was from the tribe of Levi.
Og vi talte om Moses, som var fra leviternes stamme.
How that his face shone after he had been with God.
Hvordan hans ansigt lyste, når han havde været sammen.
And he was transformed into God's
Han
image.
blev forvandlet ind i Guds afbillede.
And then the circle of the community or the people of the tribes
Og cirklen omkring fællesskabet af stammerne
represents our fellowship with each other within the family of God.
repræsenterer vores fællesskab med hinanden i Guds store familie.
And then the outside of that circle represents the entire world, all nations,
Og uden for denne cirkel repræsenterer hele verden, alle nationer,
to which we are to be a blessing.
som vi har fået til opgave at være en velsignelse for.
And there's a calling to all nations to come to the center.
Og der er en kald, der går ud til alle nationer om at komme til centrum.
And so we talked about an arrow representing that calling to follow Jesus, which is coming all the way to the center.
Og vi taler om den her pil, som går ind i selve centrum, som repræsenterer vores kald til at nærme os og følge Jesus.
And then as we grow in relationship with God,
Og i takt med, at vi vokser i relation til Gud,
and we grow into His likeness, transformed more into Him,
og vi bliver gradvist forvandlet til at ligne ham,
and we learn to work together with Him,
og vi lærer at arbejde sammen med ham,
He uses us with an arrow going out
så er der en pil, der går ud fra centrum, ud i verden.
to the community of God's people,
Og Gud bruger os til at række ud i første omgang til
but also,
Guds menighedsfællesskab,
also to all of those in our lives that do not know Him.
men også til alle mennesker omkring os i vores liv, som ikke kender ham.
So discipleship is coming to Christ, but also being sent
Så
by Christ.
discipleskab er at bevæge sig mod Kristus, men også at blive sendt ud til mennesker.
We talk about the church being the church gathered and the church scattered.
Vi taler om, at kirken, det er kirken, der bliver samlet, men det er også kirken, der bliver sendt ud.
We're all we gather to the Father, and we are scattered by the Father, or sent by the Father.
Vi er indkaldt af faderen, men vi er også udsendt af faderen.
But the very core of God's purposes is our relationship with Him and learning to speak with Him and know Him.
Selve kernen i Guds forhold med os, det er vores relation til ham. Det er, at vi kan kende ham og tale med ham.
Have you noticed when you see prophetic pictures in the Bible of the throne of God,
Har I lagt mærke til, at når I ser profetiske billeder i Bibelen, som handler om Guds trone,
that there's always something flowing from the throne,
at der altid er en, der flyder ud fra tronen,
coming out from the
som
throne?
kommer ud fra tronen.
If you look in the book of Revelation, when John was able to see into the heavenlies,
Hvis I ser for eksempel Johannes åbenbaring, hvor Johannes var i stand til at se ind i det himmelske.
the first thing he saw was a room with a throne.
Det første han så var et rum med en trone.
Right? When Isaiah was able to see into the heavenlies, in Isaiah 5, I
Da
believe this,
Esajas i Esajas 5 var i stand til at se ind i det himmelske.
the first thing he saw,
Det første han så,
the throne,
en trone,
and someone who was sitting on the throne.
og en, der sidder på tronen.
When Daniel was able to see into the
Da
heavenlies,
Daniel så ind i det himmelske,
first thing he saw,
første han så,
he saw thrones, and one throne with the Ancient of Days sitting on it.
han så troner og en trone med den
Yeah, den gamle.
gamle
Gud.
Ancient of Days, altså Gud siddende på.
My point is that the throne of God is at the very center of the
Min
universe.
pointe er, at Guds trone er i selve centrum af
And
universet.
out from the throne we see the river of life.
Og ud fra den trone ser vi livets
We
flod.
see light.
Vi ser lys.
We see power. We see His word coming out.
Hans ord kommer ud.
The throne of God is the very center of all things.
Guds trone er centrum for.
And the camp of Israel was an illustration of the very cosmos itself,
Og Israels lejr var sådan set en illustration af selve kosmos.
where God Himself is the center of all
Hvor
things.
Gud selv er center for det
And
hele.
the ark in that tent, the ark of the covenant,
Og pagtens ark i det telt
was called the throne of grace, or the throne of mercy.
nådes trone.
It was the center, representing the center of all things.
Det var det, der repræsenterede centrum for det hele.
But now that box, the ark, was not the actual throne. Are you with me?
Men altså arken, pagtens ark, den kasse, var jo ikke selve Guds
That's
trone.
very important.
Så det er vigtigt.
Bible has, God uses symbols to communicate with us.
Gud bruger symboler for at kommunikere med os.
And the ark was a shadow of the real throne.
Og arken var en afskygning, et afbillede på det sande trone.
In the book of Hebrews, it's called a shadow of the real things.
I Hebræerbrevet så bliver det kaldt et afbillede af det virkelige.
So, when we talk about prayer, we speak of coming before God's throne.
Når vi taler om bøn, så taler vi om at komme ind for Guds trone.
Hebrews chapter 4 says that we are to come boldly before the throne of
Det
grace,
siger, at vi skal komme frimodigt til nådens trone,
so that we might receive mercy,
så vi kan modtage noget,
but also grace to help in time of need.
men også noget til at hjælpe andre.
So we've got a couple of hours together this morning.
Vi har et par timer sammen den her formiddag.
So I want us to look more closely at that relationship with God before His
Så
throne.
jeg kunne godt tænke mig, at vi så lidt nærmere på den her relation med Gud inden for hans tron.
And try to remember this big picture where this fits at the very center.
Og prøv at have med i jeres tanker det her store billede om Guds
Because
trone som
it's
centrum.
out of our relationship with God that how do I say it, ministry comes.
Fordi det er ud fra den her relation, vores relation til Gud, er en tjeneste.
And that's why Jesus said, without me or outside of that relationship with me, you can do nothing.
Derfor sagde Jesus,
That's what he meant.
at uden for den her relation, uden mig, kan I ingenting gøre.
Because the relationship with Him is like how do I say it, the source, a spring.
For relationen med ham, det er selve kilden.
And ministry and everything we want to do for God comes from that spring.
Og tjeneste og alt, hvad vi gerne vil gøre for Gud, det kommer ud fra den kilde.
Even in the book of Ezekiel,
Even i Ezekiels bog.
if you read from chapter 42 and onward, or
Hvis du
not,
læser
it's in
fra
chapter 42, it's in 42.
Vi læser kapitel 42.
It says that there was a stream coming from outside from the temple.
Læser vi, hvordan der bliver skrevet i Ezekiel, ser en flod komme ud fra templet.
It's another picture of the throne of God and the water or the life coming from Him.
Endnu et billede på Guds trone og det livets vand, som strømmer ud fra ham.
It represents the empowering, giving grace of God.
Som repræsenterer den udrustning, det der giver kraft, som kommer fra Gud.
And Jesus in John 7 said that if you come to me and drink,
Jesus siger i Johannes 7, hvis I kommer til mig og drikker,
then you will have a spring where? In here.
så vil I have en kilde af levende vand.
And it will be like a spring flowing with life.
Der vil være en kilde, der springer med levende.
So you get the picture?
Så vi kan
Life
se,
has a center.
livet har et centrum.
And that center is Christ. It is the Father. It is God.
Det centrum er den treenige Gud, Kristus, Faderen, Sønnen.
And if we live in a right relationship with our center,
Hvis vi lever i en rigtig relation med vores center,
then we become what God has designed us to be.
så bliver vi til det, som Gud har designet os til.
And we can do what God has called us and designed us to do.
Vi kan gøre det, Gud har kaldet os og designet os til at gøre.
So I wanted to talk about the word pray. There's a couple of words in the New Testament for to pray.
Jeg vil gerne tale om bøn her, og der er et par ord i det nye testamente omkring det at bede.
One of the words is simply like in Swedish or Danish when it means to ask for something, right?
Et ord er meget simpelt, ligesom på dansk eller svensk, når man, og det betyder bare at bede om noget, spørge om noget.
In Swedish, the word to ask and to pray is the same thing, right?
På svensk, der
Is it
er
Danish? Is it in Danish?
bede om,
Be or be. Yeah.
det er det samme ord.
Be om en kop kaffe.
Bede om en kop kaffe,
Be om helande.
eller bede om helbredelse.
It's the same word.
Det er
But
samme.
that's not the main word that's used for prayer.
Men det er faktisk
In the
ikke
New
det
Testament.
primære ord, der bliver brugt om bøn.
There's another
Der er et andet ord.
And there's a Greek word, and it means, I don't know if I need to even say it, but there's a Greek word, and the first part of the word is P-R-O-S, pros,
Der er et græsk ord, det første del af ordet P-R-O-S, pros.
and it means to have your face toward someone, to be turned toward someone.
Og det betyder at være vendt imod nogen, have sit ansigt vendt imod nogen.
Or that you are even bowing down before that person.
Eller det kan også betyde, at du bøjer dig ned ind for den person.
And then the second word, euchomai, it means longing or desire or wish.
Og det andet del af ordet eukomai betyder en længsel, et behov, et ønske.
And those two words together are the word for prayer in the New Testament.
Og de to ord sammen, det er ordet for bøn i Nye Testament.
Do you see the tent in
Kan I
that?
se teltet i det?
Remember the Levites had their tents toward.
Husk, jeg fortalte i går aftes, at levitterne havde deres telt vendt med åbningen mod mødetelt.
All of the people of the camp had their tents facing the center.
Og resten af Israels folk havde også deres telte placeret med åbningen mod centrum.
They were facing toward the tent, toward the throne.
De havde deres ansigt vendt mod Gud, mod tronen.
And I just love that picture, that it's like prayer is primarily a picture of us with our face toward God with a longing for Him and
At
for His
bøn
life.
er primært også vendt med vores ansigt mod Gud og med en længsel i vores liv efter ham.
It's the same picture as in Exodus 33:11.
Det er det samme billede, der blev brugt i 2. Mose 33.
We spoke of yesterday that Moses spoke face to face.
Hvor Moses han stod ansigt til ansigt.
So that picture of Moses is the word for prayer. Is what I'm
Så
saying.
det billede på Moses, fra Moses fra 2. Mosebog, det er billedet på bøn.
It's not just asking for things.
Det er ikke kun at bede om ting,
It's actually knowing God.
men det er at kende.
And the other big word in the New Testament is the word for worship, which is similar.
Og det andet ord, som minder om det i Nye Testament, er ordet for tilbedelse.
And the word for worship is that same word, P-R-O-S,
Ordet for tilbedelse er det samme ord, P-O-S,
and it's combined with another word, to kiss.
og det er forbundet med et andet ord, som betyder at kysse.
So it's not asking for things,
Så det er ikke at bede om ting,
but it's actually adoring Him and bowing down to like kiss the feet of the King.
men det er at beundre ham, at bøje sig ned for ham og kysse kongens fødder.
So worship is not focused on our needs, but it's focused on our adoration or appreciation of God Himself.
Så lovsang handler ikke om vores behov, men det handler om vores beundring, vores værdsættelse af ham.
And that is at the very center of the church.
Og det skal være i centrum af kirken.
It's at the very center of our lives.
Det skal være i centrum af vores liv.
And so I think if you want to have to understand what is the primary purpose of the church,
Så hvis vi skal forstå, hvad der er kirkens primære formål,
it's a gathering of people
så er det et fællesskab af mennesker,
who are meeting face to face with God,
som mødes med Gud ansigt til ansigt,
who are being conformed to His image,
som bliver forvandlet ind i hans billede,
who are learning to collaborate and work together with Him,
som lærer at samarbejde med ham,
and who are being sent out to serve
og som bliver sendt ud for at tjene.
every day,
Hver dag.
to serve one another,
Til at tjene hinanden,
but also to serve and to represent Him among those who do not know Him
men
yet.
også at tjene og repræsentere ham iblandt dem, som endnu ikke kender ham.
Isn't that good?
Er det jo?
The Lord has called us to Himself.
Herren har kaldet os ind i nærværet, altså til.
And then I wanted to spend, here's the plan for the rest of our time together this morning.
Her er min plan for resten af vores tid sammen den her morgen.
There are two major places in the New Testament where Jesus teaches about prayer.
Der er to primære steder i Nye Testamentet, hvor Jesus han underviser om bøn.
One of those is Matthew 6,
En er Matthæus 6,
and he has a pretty long teaching about prayer there.
han har en rimelig lang undervisning om bøn der.
And the other one is Luke 11.
Og den anden er Lukas 11.
And in both of those, you read the Lord's Prayer.
Og på begge steder, der læser man Herrens bøn eller fadervor.
In Luke 11, you read the Lord's Prayer.
Eller lige Lukas 11.
And then I want to say, if we have time, to take a closer look at the Lord's Prayer.
Jeg vil se, om vi har tid til at se lidt nærmere på Herrens bøn.
Because we see these same things in the Lord's Prayer.
For vi ser de samme elementer i fadervor.
So let's start with Matthew chapter 6, if you have your Bible.
Men lad os starte med Matthæus 6, hvis I har jeres bibler med.
Matthew chapter 6, let's look at verse 5 and 6.
Lad os se på vers 5 og 6.
I have it in front of me in Swedish, but if you want to just read it in Danish.
Jeg læser på dansk. Og når I beder, må I ikke være som hyklerne, der ynder at stå og bede i synagoger og på gadehjørner, for at vise sig for mennesker. Sandelig siger jeg, de har fået deres løn. Når du vil bede, så gå ind i dit kammer og luk din dør og bed til din fader, som er i det skjulte, og din fader, som ser i det skjulte, skal lønne dig.
It's kind of a strange thing that happens when you become a Christian.
En lidt underlig ting, der sker, når du bliver kristen.
You moved from when I became a Christian, how do I say it? At first I wanted to be liked by all of my friends outside the church.
Før jeg blev kristen, så ville jeg gerne være holdt af, at alle mennesker uden for kirken, mine venner der.
But then when I became a Christian, I also wanted to be liked by those who are in the church.
Da jeg så blev kristen, så ville jeg også gerne have, at dem, der var i kirken, holdt af mig.
I mean, you want people around you to think that you're good, that you're okay.
Der er sådan en grundlæggende behov for, at mennesker omkring os skal synes, at vi er gode.
And it's
og okay.
easy to start doing things so that they will see you and feel that you're a good guy.
Og det kan være en fristelse at have et motiv for at gøre ting, så mennesker omkring os kan se, at vi er en god fyr.
You see the same thing on Facebook. How many of you have Facebook?
Hvor mange har Facebook?
Okay. Most of us. It feels good to get a like.
Det føles godt at få et like.
Yes, they liked what I said. They liked what I
De
said.
kunne lide, hvad jeg sagde.
Or they liked my picture.
Eller de kunne lide mit billede.
I put up a picture last year.
Jeg satte et billede op sidste år.
And it was a picture of the ice when it was melting on the lake outside of our home there.
Og det var et billede af isen, som smeltede i en sø uden for vores hjem i
And
Stockholm.
the wind was blowing from the north.
Og vinden blæste fra nord.
And the whole ice sheet was moving toward the shore.
Og hele iskappen bevægede sig mod land.
And so the ice was like crumbling up in a big pile on the shore.
Så isen der ligesom knustes og bevægede sig op i en stor bunke på kysten.
It looked like gravel, you
Det
know.
lignede faktisk skærver.
Yeah, and I had never seen that before.
Jeg
It
har
was
aldrig
just
set det
moving.
fænomen før. Det bevægede sig bare.
And so I took a video of
Så
it
jeg lavede en video af det,
and I put it on
og
Facebook.
jeg lagde det på Facebook.
And I got like 200 likes.
Og jeg fik 200 likes.
So yes,
Det føltes godt.
but sometimes we can be driven by a desire to get likes in the church.
Men nogle gange kan vi være motiveret af en længsel efter at få likes i kirken.
The way we lead worship, the way we pray, the way we
Den måde
do
vi beder
things.
på, den måde vi leder lovsang, den måde vi gør ting på.
Even our serving can, it's good to be liked.
Selv vores måde at tjene på kan være motiveret. Det føles godt at være
Now that's not
liked.
all bad,
Og det er jo ikke udelukkende dårligt.
because we need encouragement.
For vi har brug for opmuntring.
And something inside of us needs to be affirmed for the good things we do.
Og noget inden vi også har brug for at blive bekræftet for de gode ting.
But it can become too important for us.
Men det kan blive for vigtigt for os.
And what the Lord is speaking about here is that there's a temptation to be like the hypocrites.
Og
He
det som
says,
Herren taler om her, det er, at der kan være en fristelse til at være ligesom hyklerne.
that everything they did was so that others could see them and they could get likes.
At alt hvad de gjorde var motiveret af, at andre kunne se dem og synes godt om dem.
He said, in order to break that, you need to learn to go into your kammare, how do you say that, private place, secret place.
Men så for at bryde det, siger Jesus, så må du gå ind i dit lønkammer, dit private sted,
Where no one else sees you,
hvor der ikke er nogen andre, der ser dig.
and there you turn your attention to God,
Og der vender du dit fokus mod Gud,
and you speak with Him,
og du taler med ham,
and you try to understand His word and His will to you.
og du forsøger at forstå hans ord og hans vilje.
And that relationship in secret
Og den relation i det skjulte
is the heart of what God wants with you.
er hjertet i, hvad Gud vil med dig.
And if you have that, then you can go out and serve.
Og når du har det, jamen, så kan du gå ud og tjene.
And it's great if other people like what you do.
Og det er da fint, hvis andre folk kan lide, hvad du gør.
That's not bad.
Det er ikke dårligt.
But the most important is when you go back into that room with God,
Men det vigtigste er, når du så går tilbage til det her skjulte sted sammen med Gud,
to look up into His
at
face.
se op i hans ansigt
He said, Lord, did you like what I did today?
og spørge, Herre, hvad synes du om det, jeg gjorde?
Yeah. Lord, did you like what I tried to do?
Herre, kunne du lide det, jeg forsøgte at gøre i dag?
Tried to help serve in the kitchen today.
Jeg forsøgte at hjælpe med at tjene ud i køkkenet i
I
dag.
picked up that piece of trash that no one saw me pick
Jeg
up.
samlede det her stykke skrald op, som ingen andre så.
I did something in the background that no one else saw. Did you like that today?
Jeg gjorde noget i baggrunden, som der er ingen andre, der så. Kunne du lide det?
With me? That's serving
Det er at tjene
from the tent,
fra templet,
where He is the one that you want to like.
hvor det er ham, som du gerne vil kunne blive lide.
So there is prayer is something that is very personal. It's not to be liked by people firstly, but to be liked by God.
Så bøn er i første hånd noget meget personligt. Målet er ikke at blive anerkendt af mennesker, men at blive set af Gud.
Do you see the tent of meeting in that verse?
Kan I genkende mødeteltet i det vers?
Go in i din kammare. Go
Gå
into
ind i
your
dit
private
lønkammer.
place. The same as Moses did.
Det samme som Moses gjorde.
Matthew chapter 6, verse 7 and 8.
Matthæus 6, 7 og 8. Når I beder, så lad ikke munden løbe, som hedningerne gør. Fordi de tror, at de bønhøres for deres mange ord. Dem må I ikke lide. Jeres fader ved, hvad I trænger til, endnu før I beder ham om det.
There's something about us that thinks that if we say the words just right, then it's better somehow before God.
Der er et eller andet i os, der får os til at tro, at hvis vi får sagt ordene på den rigtige måde, så er det på en eller anden måde bedre end for Gud.
Or even if we say them more than once, we say them several
Eller
times,
hvis vi gentager dem tilstrækkeligt mange gange,
it'll work a little better.
så virker det lidt bedre.
It's almost like we treat God sometimes like a machine, you know, one of those vending machines,
Nogle gange så behandler vi Gud lidt som sådan en automat,
where you're going to buy a Coca-Cola.
og du skal måske købe en cola.
And if you put the money in
Og hvis du putter penge i,
and you want to get the cola out,
og du får colaen ud,
you want to work immediately.
så vil du gerne have, at det skal virke.
If it doesn't work, you start hitting the machine,
Hvis
right?
det ikke virker, så begynder du at slå på maskinen for at få den cola ud.
Yes, now, boom.
Jesus.
Sometimes we do that with God.
Nogle gange så gør vi det med Gud.
Yes, now, boom.
I Jesu navn, gør nu.
Like he doesn't give me my Coke.
Giv mig nu min cola.
And maybe your Coke is something much more important. You know,
Måske
something that is important.
er det noget, der virkelig betyder noget for dig. Mere end cola.
But it's not the words in the first, the words that really make the difference.
Det er ikke ordene i sig selv, der gør en forskel.
It is having your face turned to God,
Men det er at have dit ansigt vendt
giving Him your attention,
og give ham din opmærksomhed.
and saying it once is okay.
Og det er jo nok at sige det en gang.
Now, I believe that we can pray for things each day, and we can repeat what we prayed for yesterday.
Jeg tror godt, vi kan bede for de samme hver dag, og vi kan gentage nogle bønner, vi har bedt i går.
But I just think God wants us to relax and understand He hears us.
Men jeg vil gerne samtidig, at vi forstår,
We don't
at vi
have
skal
to
slappe af
We don't have to explain it too much to
og
Him.
tro, at han hører os. Vi behøver ikke igen og igen at forklare ham.
And that's what Jesus is saying. He knows what you need before you ask.
Han ved jo, hvad du har brug for, før du spørger.
But He does want us to ask.
Men han vil gerne have, at vi spørger.
It's part of this collaboration with God.
Det er en del af det her samarbejde med Gud.
We see it all through the New Testament that God waits to act until we ask.
Vi ser det gennem hele Nye Testamentet, at Gud vælger at vente med at handle, til vi beder.
Sometimes He acts without us asking, but
Nogle
most of
gange-
the time He waits until we ask.
Nogle gange handler han uden at vi har bedt om det, men som oftest venter han til vi beder om det.
It's a beautiful part of the picture of collaboration with God.
Det er et smukt billede på det her store billede med samarbejde med Gud.
So even like when we look at the Lord's Prayer later today,
Så når vi ser på Fader vores sind,
I think those are wonderful words.
synes jeg, det her er vidunderlige ord.
But you can say it in a different way.
Men du kan sige det på en anden måde.
It's not the actual words themselves that are magical.
Det er ikke de ordrette ord i Fader vores, som i sig selv er magiske.
When we think the words are magical, then that becomes almost like, how do I say it? It's more magic and not true spirituality.
Hvis vi falder for den fristelse og tror, at det ordene i sig selv er magiske, så bliver det ikke relationen, en åndelig relation, men det bliver ordene på en eller anden måde.
But the words have meaning, and it is the heart of the words.
Men ordene har en betydning, og de viser os hjertet i bøn.
Okay, the third thing I want us to look at Matthew 6, verse 14 to 15.
Den tredje, jeg vil have, at vi skal se på, er i Matteus 6, vers 14 og 15.
And you can just read those two verses.
For tilgiver I mennesker jer deres overtrædelser, vil jeres himmelske fader også tilgive jer. Men tilgiver I ikke mennesker, vil jeres fader heller ikke tilgive jeres overtrædelser.
This is really interesting.
Det her det er meget interessant.
Our relationships affect our relationship with God. Our relationships with the people affect our relationship with God.
Vores relation med mennesker omkring os påvirker vores relation til Gud.
Did you know the Apostle Peter wrote to the church,
Hvis de at apostlen Peter skrev til kirken,
and he told the men, he said, live at peace or harmony. I think he used the word peace with your wives, so that your prayers do not be hindered.
han sagde et eller andet med i retning af at leve i fred med jeres ægtefæller, med jeres koner, så jeres bønner ikke bliver forhindret.
Wow,
Wow.
guys.
Men
Our relationship with our wives and our husbands
vores relation til vores ægtefæller
affects our prayer
påvirker
connection
vores
with God.
bønneliv.
Jesus said in Matthew 5, he said, if you go to the temple or the tent
Jesus siger i Matthæus 5, hvis du går til templet eller til
and you're
templet,
going there to worship, you're going to come with an offering.
og du kommer for at tilbede, og du kommer med et offer,
And you remember, oh, someone has something against me.
og du kommer i tanke om, der er en, der har en konflikt med mig.
Maybe I said something that offended that person,
Måske sagde jeg noget, der fornærmede det menneske.
or maybe that person said something that offended me.
Og måske sagde det menneske noget, der fornærmede mig.
But there's not peace there in that
Men der er
relationship.
ikke fred i den relation.
Jesus said, put your offering to the side
Så siger Jesus, så stil dit offer til side,
and go talk with that person.
og gå og tal med det menneske.
And do your best to try to make it good.
Og gør dit bedste for at forsones med den person.
And when you've done that, then you come back and you give your
Og
offering.
når du har gjort det, så kom tilbage og giv dit offer, bring dit offer
Our
til.
relationships affect our connection with God.
Vores relationer påvirker vores relation til Gud.
It says in the book of Romans, chapter 15, I
I
think.
Romerne 15, tror jeg.
It says that as far as it depends on you,
Der siger Paulus, i det omfang du kan,
yeah, it was Paulus that said it, and live in peace with
leve i
everyone,
fred med enhver.
as far as you can.
I det omfang, det kan lade sig gøre for dig.
Sometimes you aren't able to live in peace with everyone,
Nogle gange vil du ikke være i stand til at leve i fred med det.
but we're to do our best. We are to try.
Men vi skal gøre vores bedste.
That's a hard one, isn't it?
Det er en udfordring.
It gets very quiet in here when I talk about that.
Det bliver ret stille, når jeg snakker om det.
The Lord sees these circles as being connected. Our relationship with Him and our relationship with the community.
Gud ser de her cirkler som værende forbundne. Vores relation til ham og vores relation til hinanden.
So that we learn to forgive.
Så vi lærer at tilgive.
We learn to actually ask for forgiveness where it's needed.
Vi lærer at bede om tilgivelse, hvor det er nødvendigt.
We learn to try to live at peace with people
Vi lærer at forsøge at leve i fred med mennesker.
as far as it depends on us.
Så vidt muligt, at det afhænger af os.
And that will affect your relationship with
Og
God.
det vil påvirke din relation til Gud.
Yeah. There's much more to say, of course, about our
Der er selvfølgelig
relationships.
meget mere at sige om det.
I want to be very careful before we leave that point.
Jeg vil gerne være meget omhyggelig, før vi går væk fra det her punkt.
Every one of us in this room has had relational struggles.
Hver eneste af os i det her rum har oplevet relationelle udfordringer og problemer.
I come from a family that was my mother and father divorced.
Jeg kom fra en familie, hvor mine forældre blev skilt.
There were fights, and
Der
there
var
were
kampe
jails and hospitals
og
and
fængsel og hospitalsindlæggelser involveret.
feelings in here,
Følelser herinde.
anger.
Vrede.
It's not easy.
Det er
Relationships.
Relationer er vanskelige.
Friends that have said things to me that have been hurtful.
Venner, som har sagt ting til mig, som har såret mig.
I have a relative that did a manipulative, was manipulative and took away part of my inheritance.
Jeg har en slægtning, som manipulerede på en måde, så det lykkedes ham at tage en del af den arv, jeg skulle have haft.
Hired a lawyer to come into the room and make my grandmother, who was senile, sign the paper.
Jeg hyrede en advokat, som kom ind i rummet og fik min bedstemor, som var senil, til at underskrive nogle papirer.
You understand?
Forstår du?
Anger.
Vrede.
But before the Lord, He wants to help us to forgive.
Men inden for Herren, så vil han hjælpe os.
I think we need to try first. I mean, I went and spoke with that person.
Jeg forsøgte selvfølgelig at tale med den her
I
person.
sat down in the living room.
Satte mig i stuen
I
sammen
expressed my anger,
satte ord på min vrede.
and I left the room.
Og jeg forlod rummet.
Yeah. But all I'm saying is that it's not easy. Relationships are not always easy.
Min pointe er bare at sige, at relationer ikke er altid lette.
But in that relationship, I've tried to forgive that person.
Men i den relation har jeg gjort mit bedste for at tilgive den person.
That person's dead today.
Den person er død i dag.
And before God, I have dealt with that, putting it on His throne,
Og
on
inden for
His
Gud har jeg
altar.
håndteret det, jeg har lagt det foran hans trone.
And I think I've done my best today to take care of it before God.
Og jeg tror, jeg har gjort mit bedste i dag for at håndtere det inden for Gud.
That's just a little story.
Det er bare en lille historie.
But maybe there's some things in your life where you can do a little more
Men måske har du ting i dit liv, hvor du bør
to take
gøre
care of
lidt
that.
mere for at håndtere de følelser.
God has not left you because of some relational struggle.
Gud forlader dig jo ikke på grund af en eller anden relationel
He's still with you.
konflikt. Han er stadig med dig.
He's your father.
Han er din far.
He loves you.
Han elsker dig.
Blood relation.
Det er jo blodsbånd med far.
But he wants to help you
Men han vil hjælpe dig
live the way he's designed you to live.
med at leve på den måde, som han har designet dig til.
So that you can have a clear relationship with him.
Så du kan have en ren relation til ham.
So Lord, I pray for your help in that area.
Så her jeg beder om din hjælp for os på det
For
her.
every one of us here that maybe struggles with some relationship.
For hver eneste af os her, som har relationelle
And
udfordringer.
I pray you'll just show each one what to do or what to say.
Og her jeg beder om, du vil vise hver eneste af os, hvad vi skal gøre, hvad vi skal sige.
And help us as far as it depends on us
Og hjælpe os i det omfang, at vi er ansvarlige
to live at peace with each person.
til at leve i fred med hinanden.
Thank you. There's so much more to say about that, but
Der er så meget mere, man kan sige om det.
that's not the focal point of today.
Men det er sådan set ikke det
But
primære.
I want to just be very careful that you understand God is still with you if you're in the middle of a relational tension.
Men det er vigtigt for mig at pointere, at Gud er stadig med dig, også selvom du udfordres i relationer.
You can still come into His
Du
presence.
kan stadig komme ind i hans
Still
nærvær.
worship Him.
Du kan stadig tilbede.
But ask Him for help
Men
to
bed ham
live
om at hjælpe dig med at leve
according to the things Jesus said.
i overensstemmelse med det, Jesus siger her.
Okay, I think we're going to take a break in a minute, but I want to look at Luke 11.
Vi tager en lille pause om lidt, men først vil jeg gerne se på Lukas 11.
And if we read several verses from verse 5 into verse 13.
Hvor vi læser en passage fra vers 5 til vers 13. Nogle af dem, som stod der, spurgte, hvad er det, I gør? I løser jo følget. Men de svarede sådan, som Jesus havde sagt. Sorry, that's the wrong. I was in Mark.
Is that the Bible or is that something else?
I just thought it was a better story.
C.S. Lewis or what is
It's the Tales of Narnia.
that? Chapter 11.
Ja. Jeg var lige et forkert sted. Verse 5 to.
Yeah, it's where it's where the disciples said, "Teach us to pray."
Ja. Måske også mere. Han sagde også til dem, hvis en af jer har en ven, og midt om natten går hen til ham og siger, kære ven, lån mig 3 brød, for en ven af mig er kommet rejsende, og jeg har ikke noget at byde ham. Og han så svarer derindefra, spar mig for det besvær. Døren er allerede låst, og mine børn og jeg selv er gået i seng. Jeg kan ikke stå op og give dig noget. Jeg siger jer, selvom han ikke står op og giver ham noget for hans venskabs skyld, vil han dog på grund af hans påtrængenhed rejse sig og give ham, hvad han har brug for. Jeg siger jer, bed, så skal der gives jer. Søg, så skal I finde. Bank på, så skal der lukkes op. For enhver, som beder, får. Og den, der søger, finder. Og den, der banker på, lukkes der op for.
2:13.
Hvilken far iblandt jer vil give sin søn en slange, når han beder om en fisk? Eller give ham en skorpion, når han beder om et æg? Når der I, som er onde, kan give jeres børn gode gaver, hvor meget snarere vil så ikke faderen i himlen give Helligånden til dem, der beder.
There's several things to say here, but I think for me, this passage speaks about a relationship of trust with God.
En af de ting, den her passage taler om, som jeg gerne vil fremhæve, er en tillidsrelation.
That we trust His love.
At vi har tillid til hans kærlighed.
That we trust that He knows what's best for us.
At vi har tillid til, at han ved, hvad der er bedst for
That
os.
we trust that He actually hears us.
At vi har tillid til, at han rent faktisk hører os.
And that we stay in a relationship of trust.
At vi bliver i en tillidsrelation med Gud.
He starts with the story of someone knocking on the door at night, asking for bread.
Jesus starter med en historie om en gut, der om natten banker på døren og beder om noget brød.
And he's saying that even on earth, when someone does that, they will eventually give you the bread.
Og han siger, selv her på jorden, hvis nogen gør det, så vil de jo på et eller andet tidspunkt give dig brødet.
So his idea is that how much more when you ask God for good things, is He not going to give you good things?
Og hans pointe er at sige, jamen, hvor meget mere skal ikke Gud Hvis I beder ham om gode ting, vil han ikke give jer gode ting.
And one of the points I think in that those verses is that we need to, hold on in faith.
Og en af pointerne med de her vers, tror jeg, er, at vi skal holde fast i tro.
I'm going to say that one more time.
Jeg siger det igen.
Holding on in faith, because God does not always answer like a Coke machine.
Holde fast i tro, fordi Gud svarer ikke altid lige så hurtigt som en colaautomat.
And sometimes God, the answer is no
Og nogle gange er svaret nej
for some things.
på nogle områder.
Some things that we think we should be yes.
Der kan være ting, vi mener, at svaret burde være ja.
Holding on in faith.
At holde fast i tro.
There's a really interesting little golden dime or golden nugget here from the scriptures.
Der er et meget interessant lille guldkorn her.
The word for faith,
ordet for tro,
has what they call a root. There's a root to all words.
Har et rod. Alle ord har jo en rod.
What is the Danish word for frelsning, salvation?
Frelse.
Frelse. Okay. Do you know what the root of that word is?
Ved I, hvad ordet for frelse
Root is a picture. It's a metaphor.
Det er en metafor.
It's someone who has their head put in the stops.
Det er nogen, der har sin hals i gabestokken.
Yeah. And their neck is tied there.
Og deres hals er bundet eller strammet til det.
They're prisoner.
De er fanger.
And when you take off that stock and you release them,
og når man løfter gabestokken, og de kommer fri,
your neck is free.
Så bliver din hals frihalset.
Frihalset, that's where frelsning comes from.
Det er der ordet frelse kommer fra.
So in the old Nordic language, it comes from.
I gamle nordiske sprog kommer derfra. Du er frihalset.
Saved. The same thing with faith. There's a picture.
Det samme med tro, der er også et billede forbundet med det.
In the bottom of that. The picture is of something being bound together, tied together, like with a rope.
Billedet er noget, der bliver bundet sammen med et reb.
Faith, strange. Strange picture. But we bind ourselves to something we cannot see.
Men i tro, der binder vi os selv sammen med noget, som vi endnu ikke kan se.
It's like we're not going to let go. We're going to hold on.
Vi holder fast
to something that we cannot see.
Til noget, som vi endnu ikke kan se.
And we're going to hold on and trust that.
Og vi vil holde fast, og vi vil have
that God will see us through.
At Gud vil bære os igennem.
In the Old Testament, there's another word that has the same root, or the same kind of root.
I Gamle Testamentet er der et andet ord, som har det samme rod med at være bundet sammen.
And that word is wait.
Og det ord er at vente.
I don't like this point.
Det bryder mig godt, den pointe.
Because sometimes faith and wait are very close to one another.
Nogle gange er begrebet tro og begrebet at vente forbundet meget tæt.
Faith by definition involves waiting.
Tro er per definition involverer per definition.
If you're waiting for something specific, then faith means that you are holding on to the confidence that
Hvis man venter på noget specifikt, så betyder tro, at man holder fast ved tilliden til, at det skal ske.
We are waiting for Jesus Christ to return.
Vi venter på, at Jesus Kristus skal komme tilbage.
And we are waiting in faith.
Og vi venter i tro.
They're just tied together, that's all.
De er forbundet tæt.
Faith and waiting.
Så tro og at vente.
I think in this teaching in Luke that we just want to underline those things. It's faith, waiting, and trust.
Jeg tror, i den her undervisning fra Lukas, så vil vi bare understrege de her ting. Tro og at vente og at have tillid.
Do we have time for one more point, or do we need to take some coffee or break now?
I think we can take one more point.
Okay, one more.
Er det okay med det?
Okay, one more. We'll take a break. And then at the end of in that passage, Jesus says in verse 9 and 10.
I den her passage siger Jesus i vers 9 og 10.
He says a famous thing here.
Han siger en meget, meget berømt ting.
He says, "Pray and you shall receive."
Han siger, bed, og der skal gives jer.
Seek and you shall find.
Søg, og I skal finde.
And knock and the door shall be opened.
Bank på, og der skal blive lukket op.
Now we have young people, we have a home group with young people.
Vi har hjemme hos os en fællesskabsgruppe med unge mennesker.
And I actually use this verse a lot.
Og jeg bruger det her vers meget.
It's an international group.
Det er en international gruppe.
And a lot of them are looking for apartments, and they're looking for jobs, and they're looking for a wife or a husband.
Og mange af dem, de leder efter en lejlighed, de leder efter et arbejde, eller de leder efter en mand eller en kone.
Right? That's what you're looking for.
Det er ligesom det, de leder efter.
They're between 20 and 35
Ja,
years old.
mellem 20 og 35.
And this says to pray, seek, and knock.
Og her står der, at vi skal bede, vi skal søge, og vi skal banke på.
Those things are part of the same picture. There's a progression here.
Der er en progression her, det er alt sammen en del af det samme billede.
If you need a job,
Hvis du har brug for et job,
you need to ask the Lord, Lord, I pray you will open the right door for me.
så må du bede Herren. Herre, jeg beder om, at du vil åbne
Show me what is best for me to do right now in this season.
Vis mig, hvad der er bedst for mig at gøre nu i den her sæson i mit liv.
But you can't just stay in the prayer room and just wait then for someone to knock on your door.
Men du kan jo bare blive i bønnerummet og vente på, at nogen skal banke på din dør.
You have to seek.
Du må søge.
And in today's world, that means Google.
Og i dagens ord for at søge er Google.
Or it means Monster. It means some job site where
Eller
there's
en anden
jobs.
søgemaskine eller job site.
Or it means looking at the store windows to see if they need new workers.
Eller gå rundt på gaden og se, om der bliver annonceret efter nye medarbejdere.
Seek means to look for it.
At søge betyder at lede efter.
It's part of collaborating with God.
Det er en del af det at samarbejde med Gud.
We ask,
Vi beder,
we seek,
vi søger.
but then eventually you're going to have to knock.
Før eller siden, så må du altså banke på os.
I teach this to the young people. I say,
Jeg underviser de unge om det her.
you have to also send in your resume,
Du må sende dit CV,
but go and knock.
men gå til dem fysisk og bank på
We
det.
have a 20-year-old girl from Germany living at
Vi
our
har
home.
en 20-årig pige fra Tyskland, som bor i
This
vores
last
hjem.
week, she was looking for jobs.
Og her sidste uge, der ledte hun efter
My
arbejde.
wife and I told her she went in and gave her resume,
Hun gik ind og afleverede sit CV,
but the boss wasn't there.
men chefen var der ikke.
And we said, go back,
Og vi sagde, gå tilbage
Open
og
the door.
bank på døren.
talk to the boss.
Snak med chefen.
So she went yesterday. I
Så
don't
det
know
gjorde
if
hun
she
i
got
går.
a job.
Jeg ved ikke, om hun har fået arbejde.
But there's a cooperation with God,
Men det er et samarbejde
Pray.
med Gud. Bed,
seeking,
søg,
knocking.
bank på.
Same thing when it comes to a husband or a wife.
Det samme, når det handler om mand eller kone.
Some of you already have a husband and a wife.
Nogle af jer har allerede en mand eller en
Some of
kone.
you don't, and I'm not going to have you raise your hand.
Og nogle af jer har ikke. Og jeg beder ikke om at løfte jeres hånd.
But it's good to pray.
Men det er godt at bede.
We ask the Lord, God, pray that you will lead me to that person that you want me
Vi
to
beder,
spend my life.
Herre, jeg beder om, at du vil lede mig til det menneske, som du ønsker, jeg skal.
But then seeking is also part of the picture,
Men at
guys.
søge er også en del af det billede.
You can't just sit in the prayer room and wait for that girl or that guy to come knocking on our door.
Vi kan ikke bare sidde i bederummet og vente på den pige eller den.
But in the normal path of life, having your eyes open to say, oh, wow,
Men i dit normale liv, i din omgang, har du øjnene åbent for at holde øje med det.
and then at some point you're going to have to ask the girl to go to coffee.
Og på et eller andet tidspunkt, så skal du spørge,
At
skal
some,
du med ud og drikke en kaffe?
yeah. Do you understand the picture?
Forstår I billedet her?
I mean, there's praying, but there's also our involvement, working together with
At
God.
bede, men der er også vores engagement, vores samarbejde.
Right before our break,
Lige før vores
when I was
pause.
traveling in Sweden with a band, I'm a musician and I traveled with the band.
Jeg var musiker, og jeg rejste rundt længe med et band.
I remember seeing my wife for the first time. I'm not going to tell you what year, it's a long time ago.
Jeg vil ikke fortælle jer, hvilket år det her var, men jeg kan huske, at jeg så min nuværende kone for
And we
første
just said hello in the food line in a restaurant.
Og vi hilste bare på hinanden i køen til mad ved en restaurant.
And she was helping our group with something.
Og hun hjalp vores gruppe med et eller andet.
A year later, we came back to the same town, and then I was able to meet her, and we were able to talk.
Et år senere kom vi så tilbage til den samme by, og jeg var i stand til at møde hende, og vi kunne snakke sammen.
And then she actually traveled with us and was interpreting me, like us.
Og så endte hun faktisk med at rejse rundt med os og tolke mig,
Before I spoke Swedish.
før jeg kunne tale svensk.
But I remember the day when I felt like, okay, I thought, wow, I'm interested in this young
Jeg
lady.
kan huske den dag, hvor jeg tænkte, wow, jeg er altså interesseret i den her unge kone.
And it was time to knock on the door.
Og det var på tide at banke på døren.
That's the scary moment.
Det er det skræmmende øjeblik.
Guys, I'm talking to you guys.
Jeg taler til.
Knocking on that door is a scary moment.
Banke på døren, det er skræmmende.
Because what if she opens and says no?
Fordi hvad nu hvis hun åbner og siger nej?
It's painful. But I mean, if you don't knock, you'll never know.
Men hvis du ikke banker på, så finder du aldrig ud af det.
You gotta knock.
Du bliver til banke på.
No pain, no gain. Yeah. Okay. But she said yes. I knocked on the door.
Jeg bankede på døren, og hun sagde ja.
And I said, do you want to have a cup of coffee in Lulu?
Jeg sagde til hende, vil du drikke en kop kaffe med mig i Lulu og i Lordag?
We were in Lulu.
Vi var i Lulu.
Sorry. It was Lulu. Sorry. I didn't mean go to Lulu. We were in Lulu.
Vi var i.
And she said yes.
Og hun sagde ja.
And so I went and picked her up the next day. We had a free day in the room.
Og vi havde en fridag med gruppen, og jeg tog derhen og
And I took her to an old conditori with,
og jeg
small
tog
cups.
hende med til sådan en gammel konditori med hyggelige små kopper.
And we had coffee, and then we walked around the city.
Og vi havde kaffe, og vi tog en tur rundt.
And then I had to knock on the door again, and it was easier the second time.
Og anden gang var det lidt nemmere at banke på døren.
But my whole point, yeah, and then it's history. We've been married 34 years.
Og nu har vi så været gift i 34 år.
But my point is that prayer is part of a life of working together with God and walking with God.
Men min pointe er, at bøn er en del af et liv, hvor vi samarbejder med Gud, og hvor vi vandrer sammen med Gud.
That's just a little picture that I think is true in business.
Og det er et lille billede, som jeg tror er sandt også i forretningslivet.
It's true for a school teacher.
Det er sandt for en skolelærer.
Pray about the things that are important in your class.
Ved om de ting, der er vigtige i din klasse.
It's true for a nurse working in a hospital.
Det er vigtigt for en sygeplejerske, der arbejder på et hospital.
It's true for a volunteer worker in a church.
Det er sandt for frivillige medarbejdere i kirken.
For a church planter.
For en menighedsplanter.
Pray, seek, knock.
Bed, søg, bank på.
In trust and faith, waiting on the Lord.
I tro, i tillid, mens vi venter på Herren.
Trying to keep ourselves in right relationship with Him.
Mens vi forsøger at bevare os selv i den rette relation med ham.
Coming back daily to the tent meeting in
Hvor
your
vi
life.
dagligt kommer tilbage til det tent, det mødested i vores liv.
Because out of that is where life happens.
Fordi uden for det sker ikke livet.
Amen?
Amen.
Lord, I pray that you'll bless our time of fellowship now.
Herre, jeg beder om, at du velsigne vores pause
And help us to grow in you as disciples.
og vores fællesskab sammen her, og hjælpe os til at vokse sammen som
And
discipler.
to learn how to walk with you and work with you in our daily lives.
At lære at vandre med dig i vores daglige liv.
In Jesus' name.
Jesu navn.
Amen.
Amen. Okay, vi skal ikke give tæt en hånd.
I also love what the disciples did before Jesus taught the Lord's Prayer.
Men jeg elsker også, hvad disciplene gjorde, før at Jesus han lærte dem bøn.
It says in the book of Luke in another place that Jesus would often go out to solitary places and pray by
Der
himself.
står i Lukas, at Jesus ofte gik ud til øde steder for at bede alene.
I don't have that verse in front of me, but he would often go out in the early mornings.
Jeg har ikke det vers lige her, men han ville ofte gå ud tidligt på morgenen.
And his disciples sometimes had to look for him. They didn't know who he was.
Og nogle gange måtte disciplene lede efter ham. De vidste ikke, hvor han var gået hen.
He was like Moses.
Han var ligesom Moses.
He went outside the camp.
Han gik uden for lejren,
And he found a private
og
place.
han fandt et privat sted,
And he would talk with the Father.
og han kunne tale med sin far.
And the rest of the day flowed out of his relationship with the Father.
Det han gjorde resten af dagen flød ud fra den relation, han havde til sin far.
Even when Jesus started his ministry, you know what he did?
Selv når Jesus han begyndte sin tjeneste, ved du så, hvad han gjorde?
He spent 40 days in his tent of meeting.
Han tilbragte 40 dage i sit mødetelt.
Do you understand what I mean?
Forstår I billedet?
He went out into the desert alone with God for 40 days.
Han gik alene ud i ørkenen sammen med Gud i 40 dage.
And when he came back from that tent of meeting,
Og da han kom tilbage fra det her
there
mødetelt,
was no physical tent, I'm
det var
speaking.
selvfølgelig ikke et fysisk telt, jeg taler metafor.
But when he came back from that 40-day time with God,
Når han kom tilbage fra sin 40 dages tid med Gud,
then his ministry flowed out of that relationship with the Father.
flød hans tjeneste ud fra den relation
There was power.
Hans himmelske far. Med kraft
There was wisdom.
og visdom.
There was an amazing work of God.
Et fantastisk arbejde, Gud han gjorde igennem Jesus.
But it came from the throne.
Men det kom fra fællesskabet ved tronen.
Isn't that a beautiful picture?
Er det ikke et smukt billede?
And so Jesus had just been out praying by himself. In
Jesus
Luke
havde lige
11.
været ude og bede alene.
And he was coming back,
Og han kom tilbage,
and his disciples saw him coming.
og disciplene så ham komme.
And they understood there's something here that we need to understand.
Og de forstod, der er noget her, som vi skal
What are
have.
you doing out there?
Hvad laver du derude, Jesus?
What are you saying to God?
Hvad er det, du siger til Gud?